No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live episode number 275 and breaking today. The hotel uprising spreads as the authorities panic about keeping control in Essex as residents in South Norfolk are the next to take to the streets.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has a long history of being an urban constituency.
As the British Bashing Corporation are accused of cutting off Nigel Farage for speaking the truth and are then humiliated in Epping.
Local people are anxious and worried about the fact that there are asylum seekers here who they say are unsupervised and unvetted, but people like Toby Robinson are not welcome.
Why are Antifa allowed to go to these demonstrations?
Nigel Farage there in Westminster in central London setting out 10 law and order policies that he would introduce.
So, of course, the MSM and the establishment intend to keep dishonestly blaming invisible far-right folk for the predicted summer of riots, but it won't work.
There wouldn't be protests at Dover or at Epping or at other places where there's hotels housing illegals if those illegals being brought into this country for a vast profit weren't raping our kids.
I'll expose the failing deep state tactics to maintain control of widespread civil unrest in my digest next. Then the superstar panel are here. Two exciting independent YouTube sensations on the right, Based and Bougie, and Stef the Alter Nerd of the Political Nerds podcast. Also coming up on the show today, what's really going on inside these migrant hotels? Well, a brave employee has spoken out to reveal the shocking truth. I'll tell you what he said. Tommy Robinson takes on Gary Lineker in a feisty new celebrity feud, and ex-Bake Off winner Nadiya Hussain keeps on trashing the United Kingdom after her BBC axing. Then, in the Uncancelled Aftershow on Substack, as Meghan Markle is finally axed by Netflix, our Royal Mastermind Angela Levin exposes how the MSM is trying to destabilise the British monarchy by welcoming back Prince Harry and spreading shocking smears against King Charles. And a gorgeous new video has been released to mark Prince George turning 12. I'll show you it over on the Substack, www.outspoken.live. Of course, at the end of the show, we'll also be revealing today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. You vote for the Union Jackass right now in the live chat on YouTube. Here are your nominees. Narinder Kaur, nominated by Anna Island 17 for calling concerned mums and children far-right activists. Here's the tweet she posted on X. Nigel Farage shouts about lawlessness while stoking the chaos himself. He calls for civil disobedience on a vast scale and warnings the veiled threats. If Britain feels lawless, it's because politicians like Farage and others are undermining trust, inciting division and turning fear into fuel for their own power. Nick Knowles, nominated by Scott Shadow 342 for running a corrupt to the core organisation and putting out a briefing on the far right at the Bell Hotel. And Scheming Sturgeon, nominated by Just Margaret 1 because she started all this trans infiltration of women's spaces with her worship of Stonewall. 3 very interesting nominees for you to choose from. Vote in the YouTube live chat right now. Send me your comments throughout the show. I will read out the best at the end of the show. But now, let's go. Nigel Farage calls it societal collapse. Now, Elon Musk, and me, for that matter, probably use another term: civil war. But no amount of MSM censorship or gaslighting about an invisible far right from the establishment can hide that the United Kingdom is on the edge after years of mass immigration putting our economic security and literal safety on the streets under the most serious threat since World War II. That doesn't mean they won't try, however. I want to show you this shocking moment. It happened on the British Bashing Corporation yesterday at the exact time that the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, raised what I have been talking about for days, the infiltration of hard left Antifa figures in these peaceful local protests.
I don't think anybody in London even understands just how close we are to civil disobedience on a vast scale in this country, and I regret saying that. Of course, there were some bad eggs that turned up at Epping. There were the usual far-right thugs. But equally, what about Antifa? Why are Antifa allowed to go to these demonstrations?
Nigel Farage there in Westminster in central London, setting out 10 law and order policies that he would introduce.
Look at that. Did you see that? So when he's talking about the far-right thugs, absolutely fine. The actual moment he talked about Antifa and the far left infiltrating Epping, they literally cut him off. Because if it doesn't fit the narrative, the MSM just doesn't want you to hear it. But luckily their power is now gone, as citizen journalists and the independent media reveal what's really happening on our streets. Real patriots know what's going on, and that the MSM continues to hide it.
Protests breaking out up and down the country, and of course, people being called names. Let us remember, there wouldn't be protests at Dover or at Epping or at other places where there's hotels housing illegals if those illegals being brought into this country for a vast profit weren't raping our kids. So don't blame people when they react.
And yesterday, the anger shifted to the market town of Dis in South Yorkshire, where patriotic locals have said enough to the Park Hotel, which is housing illegal migrants who are known to be hiding knives.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has a long history of being an urban constituency. Decisions that disregard our worries, sideline our voices, and treat our park. I'm Luke Umperville, the actual one that organises protests, a normal, constituent. It's a privilege to stand with you today outside our Park Hotel for our peaceful protest. I grew up here, I went to school here, I worked here, and through all of that, the Park Hotel has been in the centre of my life and my community, unlike yours.
So what I see there is a whole load of patriots who aren't causing any trouble but are expressing the anger that we all feel. And as ever, it was the hard left in Dis, no doubt, backed by Antifa, who did their best to cause trouble and sow division.
The illegal migrant hotel. They're going home. They're going home. Whose streets? Our streets. 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 Whose streets? Our streets.
Not going to give up that. It's going to get worse and worse. Then we'll be
Do you guys speak for the people of this? Do you guys speak for the people of this? Do you speak, really? Because these are all locals. Do you really think are you really? We outnumbered you guys. You do not speak for the people of this.
Traitor! Traitor!
No, you don't. These are locals. These are locals of this.
Traitor!
And you got outnumbered. How does that feel? How does that feel? You got outnumbered. I used to, yeah. Yeah. No, not yet. I've never claimed to be a this local. These guys are. These guys are. They are. They are.
Why the hell? Seriously, why the hell would you go to that hotel where people are peacefully protesting after illegal migrants have been found with knives? Why the hell would you go and face them down? What are you doing? Matt Goodwin posted about the spreading of the hotel Uprising, writing, "There is now also a protest in Norfolk coming after Dover and Epping. I hope the UK state and the Labour government begin to realise what they have created here. A tinderbox." Tommy Robinson weighed in, writing, "Locals are outside the Park Hotel in Dis this evening against unvetted migrant men being housed there. A lad who used to work there recalls finding drugs and knives hidden by the migrants." And of course, the British Bashing Corporation want to make these protests all about Tommy Robinson himself, as Victoria Derbyshire of Newsnight made clear on an attention-seeking visit to Epping yesterday.
In Epping Forest, and this is where single male asylum seekers are being housed. As you can see, there are gates, locked gates, stopping anybody from going in, and there are security guards. And that is because there have been demonstrations here over the last few days, mostly from local residents who say it's inappropriate that asylum seekers are housed not too far from a school, not too far from their high street. I've just spoken to the council leader, and he said that these demonstrations have been taken advantage of from people on the far right and on the far left. He told me that the situation right now is a powder keg, as he put it. He said it's expected that Tommy Robinson is coming here in the next few days. He made it absolutely clear that Tommy Robinson would not be welcome in Epping Forest, would not be welcome at the Bell Hotel. Yes, local people are anxious and worried about the fact that there are asylum seekers here who they say are unsupervised and unvetted, but people like Tommy Robinson are not welcome.
The Grift Report responded directly to Victoria Derbyshire, writing, "A question for you. Who is this far right you mention? As the only groups I can think of is Homeland and Britain First, and as far as I'm aware, they were not present at Epping on both protests. My next question is to the council leader, Chris Whitbread. You say Tommy Robinson is not welcome on Sunday, but rapists and sex offenders who house in the Bell Hotel are? Is this really the message you want to send to the people who elect you, the angry locals who pay your wages, who you are supposed to serve and protect?" But what's brilliant is that, let's be honest, Victoria Derbyshire clearly went to Epping looking for a narrative. And that narrative was totally exploded when she happened to speak to one mixed race Essex patriot about Tommy Robinson.
I've just been talking to the council leader, and he said that Tommy Robinson is expected here. What do you think of that?
Look, I'm mixed race. Okay, I'm going to state that. I'm mixed race. I'm old enough to remember the BNP. Tommy Robinson is not racist.
As far as you're concerned, he is welcome here.
I think for me personally, I don't think it's a good idea.
Oh.
Because of the amount of people he'll bring from outside the area. At the moment, it's a local thing for local people who want to voice their opinion and want the government to do something about it. You bring Tommy Robinson here with all the good intentions in the world, I don't think it's going to end well.
That backfired, right? You could hear the disappointment in Victoria Derbyshire's voice as she almost sighed as a mixed-race Essex local said, no, Tommy Robinson isn't racist. This woman didn't fit the narrative either, as she made it clear that the vast majority of locals are not actually political at all.
You know, they're not reform or anything like that. They're just there to protect their children.
Why do you think it's inappropriate if there's a school nearby, for example?
We don't know where they've come from. We don't know. Well, that sounds so right-wing, but I'm not. I just find it just wrong. And why did they close it in the first place? So I don't think it should be open at all.
There's your far right, Victoria Derbyshire. Do you see what happened? So when she was outside the hotel, before she'd actually spoken to the locals, it was all about Tommy Robinson and the far right threat. And then she gets out and she actually is faced by the people who are not prepared to put up with this anymore. Now, back in the Newsnight studio last night, its political editor had to admit that according to his sources, the government now fears a summer of riots is coming.
But interestingly, I was talking to one parliamentary veteran. They are really, really worried. They said to me, we are going to have a summer of riots. You can just feel it, they said. It is a tinderbox. That was the word used by Neil Hudson, the Conservative MP for Epping Forest, on this programme on Friday. And what this person said to me is that it's no doubt that the bad elements are driving the violence and the disturbance, but they are feeding off concerns in the community. And listen to what this veteran MP said to me. They're talking about how they're seeing a change in their constituency. Good, ordinary people feeling their town is changing around them. They go to church, they have a house, and then they're caught on either side with what we call HMOs, houses in multiple occupancy, and they say that there are migrants there, and these people feel that they are losing control. That is a mainstream politician. You've never heard that sort of language before, but that is reflecting, they would say, the concerns on the ground in their constituents.
Now, of course, one of the few politicians who is prepared to speak on the record publicly is one of the only true Conservatives still part of the Conservatives, Suella Braverman.
I do have sympathy for the people protesting. I was looking at the footage. A lot of them are mums and families, dads, children are really furious about what's happening in Epping, but it reflects a concern across the country. People are scared. People have had enough of illegal migrants breaking into our country and harming our women and girls and ruining our communities. And that's not racist. That is honesty.
Because that's the accusation. As soon as you say that we are protecting our women and girls, that's racist to say that.
Yeah, and that is a way to gaslight the British people and shut down the debate. That's what the lefty establishment wants us to do. They want to gag us into silence, but we need to keep standing up and calling out the truth. That's why, as long as it's peaceful, those protests should have the right to express their very legitimate concerns.
Now, when you see Suella there, it makes it even more insane, doesn't it? It makes you realise how insane it is that Reform's enemy of the people, Zia Youssef, launched such a deranged attack on her, effectively blocking her imminent defection to Reform UK. There was more.
Farage said yesterday that Britain is on the brink of collapse, I think in part because of these protests we're seeing, in particular in Epping. Are you concerned about the level of violence we're seeing there? Have you condemned that? Will you condemn that violence, not just from counter-protesters, but also we've seen people in masks throwing things at the police, some officers injured. Do you fear that could spread across the country?
Well, I think we are living in a bit of a tinderbox at the moment, and what happens is when fury and frustration spill over, people feel they need to take action, and so they will start with peaceful protests. But unfortunately, that can attract people who are not peaceful, and it can attract thugs, and then you get counter-protests, and then you get violence, and then you get an uncontrollable situation when it comes to civil disorder. That's criminal, and the police need to step in. But it's not a very it's not a very big step to take from one to the other. That's why we need to be very, very careful. That's why we need to get a grip on the migrant crisis. People have had enough. They're furious. They're feeling powerless. They're feeling insulted, and they want to take action. They feel like they're being ignored.
Now, hilariously, the critics on the hard left, including of the Reform Party, are now trying to attack patriots at the Epping protests, where I actually think we should celebrate them. Look at this from this account called Reform Party UK Exposed, where they circled these great patriots who are part of Reform UK. And I say congratulations to Karen McIver, who is the head of local government for Reform UK, well, the mother, sorry, of the head of local government for Reform UK. Also the town councillor for Reform, Melanie Moxham for Clacton, who's there, and the Reform UK councillor, Amy Katisa. As I say, congratulations. I mean, no one should feel ashamed for being part of this patriotic movement. And I think it's brilliant, actually, that Reform UK is there and represented. But hope not hate. A true enemy of Britain is doing their usual shtick, trying to smear patriots with this new report. Look at this. Briefing how far-right agitators turned a peaceful protest in Epping violent. They wrote, the far-right were quick to jump on this protest. So far, Hope Not Hate have identified the following far-right figures. They include Jamie McIver. He's a Reform UK councillor. How ludicrous. They say he's on the far right. Absolutely nuts. And by the way, this report does not talk about at all the hard left. the hard left infiltration by Antifa, which is actually what caused the violence. So Hot Not Hate's propagandist-in-chief, the truly awful liar Nick Lowles, added, the events in Epping are a symptom of a recurring trend within the far right, co-opting the high emotions of local people to whip up hatred. The far right demonise and vilify all migrants, including the other innocent residents at the hotel, creating a climate of hatred and hatred locally. Sadly, violence is the result. The far right is seeking to sow division in the local area, which does nothing to assist the victims of sexual abuse. Now, could anyone be more out of touch with how British mums and dads really feel when your daughters are no longer safe from illegal migrants on their local high street in the middle of the day? Platitudes from the likes of Hope Not Hate, I think we've just got to render them completely worthless. But a worrying development this afternoon. Look at this hotel. It's the Britannia International in Canary Wharf. It's a place that apparently costs £469 a night to go and hire a room. It's got a pool. And look at what happened today. So we're told that the staff of the Britannia International Hotel have been laid off, and tourists who have turned up at the door of the hotel are unable to get in. Their bookings are not being considered valid. Apparently, because there is a plan to move some of the illegal migrants from Epping to Canary Wharf, which I guess you could argue is an area that doesn't really have any locals. Is this going to happen? Of course, we will keep an eye on it. But what I would say is this game of whack-a-mole from our officials, it's not going to work this time because you are only moving the problem. Now, the Superstar panel. Brilliant to have two YouTube sensations on the right with me. Sintich Junga, who is of course better known as Based and Bougie, and Stef the Alter Nerd, who is behind the YouTube channel The Political Nerds. So, Based and Bougie, what do you make of the BBC desperately trying to pin all of this on Tommy Robinson and the far right? And then Victoria Derbyshire is actually faced with the locals who paint her a totally different picture. It was humiliating for her, wasn't it?
I just don't understand why the leftist media always have Tommy Robinson's name in their mouth.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, at this point, it's becoming an obsession because what does this actually have to do with Tommy Robinson? This has nothing to do with Tommy Robinson. This has to do with the fact that a migrant who had been in the country for, I believe, 8 days decided to assault a child. What does this have to do with Tommy Robinson, and why do they keep picking on Tommy Robinson and making every issue in the country a Tommy Robinson issue? It makes zero to no sense. But at the same time, it's very symbolic of the fact that our establishment loves to gaslight us and loves to gaslight us into believing that this community of people who simply just want to protect their children are doing something wrong. And at the same time, it just makes you ask the question, like, what has happened to this country? This country that used to be, you know, the epitome of protecting and defending children can't open their mouth to say that this migrant assaulting a child is wrong, full stop. But instead they have to add but. Instead they have to add the Stop Racism rally. Instead they have to add Tommy Robinson. It makes zero to no sense. And I have another question for the Antifa and Stand Up to Racism rally. Why is it always white people with pixie cuts? Why do I never see migrants? Why do I never see Asians? Why do I never see black people standing up to racism? Why is it always these hard lefts, white people? Somebody is paying these people, because I find it so funny how they're always at these protests on time and they always have their little signs ready and they're always here to counter the exact thing that would actually not only defend the local communities, but their children as well. These people are satanic and they are being paid, because for you to go out of your way to defend a migrant assaulting a child, there's something genuinely wrong with you.
Paid operatives indeed. And the moment, Steph, I found this so fascinating in the coverage yesterday, the moment that Nigel Farage raised Antifa and the hard left on the BBC. Did you see that? He was just cut.
Yeah.
His audio was cut immediately. It's like, do we not see what you're doing?
The question that kind of comes to my mind is essentially, why did they cut off Farage when he mentioned Antifa's involvement in Epping? We all know as far as I'm concerned anyway, that the BBC is essentially the mouthpiece of our corrupt government at the moment. So if the BBC is cutting off Farage when he's mentioning Antifa's involvement, my bigger question is, well, hang on a minute, what's the government got to hide? Why doesn't the government want us to know about Antifa's involvement in Epping? Especially when I saw on X clips and clips coming through of police vans bussing in the counter-protesters and Antifa to stand against the people in Epping.
100%.
Well, hang on a minute. Why are you cutting off Farage? We know the government, as far as we're concerned, is involved in getting Antifa into these protests to try and start trouble, this, that and the other. Don't try and pull the wool over our eyes by trying to cut off Farage. If anything, it's proving our suspicions even more.
100%. And look, the problem is, based in Bougie, is the police are already totally overwhelmed with this one protest. They say it's cost them £100,000. It's stretched resources. So when you hear these warnings on news now, oh, it's going to be a summer of riots, I don't think that's true, but I think they are not prepared for the fact that there could be peaceful protests. I mean, why should there not be peaceful protests outside every migrant hotel in this country, based in Bougie? Because why should we have to keep on putting up with this? When is enough enough?
You know, when they said that it might be a summer of riots, I generally believe them because the establishment is antagonizing these communities. They continuously keep antagonizing these communities when they defend the predators rather than the victims. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the footage of the police literally surrounding the migrant hotel like a wall rather than surrounding the home of the child who was assaulted. But at the same time, I'm actually happy that these protests are happening because it's actually symbolic of the current state of this country, which is you have the Epping community who almost symbolize the general public who are so desperate for their children to be protected. And then you have the hard left who symbolize the establishment who are so thirsty to paint off this image that multiculturalism is thriving and it's doing so well, when in actual fact is not. A lot of these migrants are making up majority of one of the most heinous crimes: assault, stealing, theft. I mean, that community is no longer safe anymore. So I just feel as though it's heartbreaking that this situation is happening, that people have to protest the way they're protesting, and that people are predicting that riots may come. But at the same time, I'm happy it's happening because at least now we can start making noise about the fact that enough is enough. We are importing cultures that are alien to Western British culture.
And look at those scenes outside the Bell Hotel. You're completely right, based in Bougie. It's not something we should see in the United Kingdom. But why on earth are people trying to blame some invisible far right rather than actually talk about the real problem, which is that we've got illegals staying in these hotels and that these illegals are sexually assaulting our teenage girls? It is sick in the middle of the day. Middle of the day. I mean, Epping has been completely changed as a community because of this. Enough is enough. And what is actually going on? What is actually going on within the migrant hotels housing illegals? Well, up until now, it has been a closely guarded deep state secret. The few independent journalists that have even been able to venture inside the hotels have been immediately expelled. And the staff, up until this point, have been seemingly silenced by draconian NDA orders. But finally, one brave staff member of the Brook and Norwich Hotel, which were previously Best Western establishments, has spoken out to the independent journalist Sidney Jones. And he paints an absolutely chilling picture of why the UK has become the #1 destination for illegal migrants around the world. Because, of course, not only do they get immediate NHS appointments, the best food, but they are also able to run rampant. Watch his expose.
They get NHS visits, dentists twice a week. Now, as everyone knows, you can't get a dentist appointment or a doctor's appointment. It's just impossible. Drugs were found in rooms where there could be kids in. They found cocaine, enough to say there was enough there to believe they were dealing. Violence towards staffs. There was events where if they didn't like the food that was on offer, because again they got a choice of food, so they'd have 3 options each night, each lunchtime, each morning. There was a young lad, he didn't like what was on offer, so he assaulted a member of security just because he didn't like the food he was offered. Comments made towards female staffs regarding clothing that they're wearing, to the point where it was then a uniform was put in place, it was trousers, no skin was basically allowed to be shown, including males. We weren't even allowed to wear shorts. Things need to change. The way things are going, people don't realise it. They see things on Facebook and they think, oh, it's just people being racist or far right. It's not racist, it's right. It's as simple as that, and that's as far as it goes. And people need to stand up and actually start back in their own country, because if not, it is going to get taken over, and your kids and your wives, they won't be safe to walk down the road, they won't be safe to walk home from work.
Well, to be honest, I think we're already there. And that's why something has to change. That's why I think Dame Andrea Jenkins of Reform UK is completely right to say, no, let's house these people in tents and then send them home, because this migrant hotel worker revealed even more shocking details, including the fact that these new migrants get a choice of 2 top-of-the-line phones and £70 cash every week. Listen.
So these hotels, they pay £2 million each year to house the immigrants. There is 170 housed in the Brook Hotel, all males from all different places. The Norwich Hotel houses males, females and kids. But again, it's more of a male majority. They're paid, £2 million each year for that. Now, when they first arrive, they get a choice of Samsungs or iPhones. Now, as most people know, neither of them phones are cheap. Now, obviously, they're all paid for by the taxpayers of this country. They get £70 cash every week into their pocket, as well as all their meals, washing, rooms cleaned for them by the staff each day. There was events where a knife was found in a room under a pillow during cleaning time from housekeeping team. Now, the knife that was found was from our own kitchen at the Norwich Hotel. So there was 2 ways that they could have got it. That was either through security, because they're very friendly with them, or one of them has broken into the kitchen during the night and they have taken it.
Sorry, I just can't get my head around. Okay, you've come here illegally. You're here raping our women. We've done no checks on you whatsoever. But what do you want? Do you want a Samsung or do you want an Apple iPhone? We are a joke. We are the laughing stock of the world. We have thrown out any vestige of credibility in terms of wanting to save our own society. And that's not to mention the impact these hotels have on the local community.
How much of a shift have you seen between how peaceful the community is?
In the last 2 years, the amount of stuff that has been posted on Facebook about foreign males that are specifically from these hotels is they're following kids, they're following women. Now, 2 years ago, obviously, of course, you're always going to get the odd person, but since these have been here, there has been a hefty increase. We saw police frequently visit the hotels from accusations made, but, so yeah, it's definitely a lot worse.
I assume you've known both for quite a few years.
Yep.
Do you think was it ever a safe place for children?
Yes, it was. It was a safe place for children until that contract got taken over on the hotel.
That's what I was going to say, is do you think it's a safe place anymore?
No, definitely not. Even walking down, let's say a kid walking down the road with their mum, I wouldn't recommend it. It's just not safe anymore. It's as simple as that.
Well done, young man. Well done, young man. Thank you to Sydney Jones, the independent journalist, for publishing that interview, to my superstar panel Based and Bougie and Stef the Alter Nerd. Stef, I mean, we need to know what's going on in these hotels. Isn't it disgusting that the mainstream media that actually has the resources to do proper exposés have just pretended that this isn't an actual story, and it has been led to brave young men like that to actually reveal the truth about what happens when you are an illegal migrant and you come to this country and it's like, here's £70, here's your iPhone, here's your Samsung, start going and arranging your drug trafficking. We are a joke.
Yeah, unfortunately, in situations like these, the whistleblower is usually the one that comes out and gives us the actual reality, the cold, hard truth as to what's happening, which is, what we've seen with that clip right there. It's absolutely horrific. When you actually watch that full clip, you guys, he turns around and he says, these illegal immigrants, they've got enough drugs in these hotel rooms with an intent to distribute. Let's put it this way, right? We know from the clips that are circulating on X that the police regularly visit these hotels, right? If you think these police don't know that they've got enough drugs in their hotel room with an intent to distribute, I'm sorry, you need your heads examining. Why aren't they being arrested for that? Why aren't they being arrested and done for and deported for stealing knives from hotel kitchens or assaulting staff? This is absolutely insane. We are a joke. I mean, the biggest joke of all is the headline that came out over the last couple of days of an asylum seeker hotel in Blackpool. There were illegal immigrants caught in Blackpool in a hotel that we're paying for, and they were filming for their OnlyFans account. It's just absolutely horrific what is going on. And the government and the mainstream media want to demonise those in Epping and other places that are peacefully protesting against these hotels. No. It's the people in the hotels, as far as I'm concerned, the majority of them that need to be demonised, because they're the ones that are doing the illegal stuff in the first place.
100%. Well, I mean, look at this story based in Bougie. Channel migrant who sexually assaulted teenage girl with special needs in broad daylight is jailed for 14 months. Based and Bougie, that is less than half of the sentence that Lucy Connolly received. As Robert Jenrick, the shadow Tory Justice Secretary, put it, this is a disgracefully short sentence for a sexual assault on an extremely vulnerable woman. I've written to appeal the sentence. He must be properly punished and deported. As I have said for years, the UK must treat small boats as a national security emergency. But let's just think about this for 1 second. You receive half the jail time if you are an illegal migrant who sexually assaults in broad daylight an intellectually disabled young woman. You receive half the sentence of Lucy Connolly, who expressed her frustration about what's going on the day of the Southport massacre. Again, we're a joke.
Am I dreaming? Like, are we actually living in reality right now? Or is this like a story from a horror book? I genuinely don't believe this. That's how shocked I am. This is the problem, right? I'm so happy that this young man actually came out to give us this information, because once again, it proves that the far right was right. Because we've been saying that these migrants are carrying drugs. He exposed that. We've been saying that these migrants are, getting an allowance. He exposed that. We've been saying are violent and also sexually assaulting children, and he's just exposed that. How many times is the far right going to prove you guys wrong? How many times? And not only that, but many communities have been devastated by mass migration, whether it's Rotherham, whether it's Rochdale, whether it's Luton, and now Epping. Like, let's use these communities as an example of what could happen to the Great Britain in general if we don't take a stance towards mass migration. Okay, I'll repeat one more time. I am a child of a migrant. There's nothing wrong with mass migration, but there's something wrong with mass importing people without vetting them, without checking them, without even checking if they have a criminal record or even a CV, and allowing them into the country. And then this is how we have absolute chaos. This is how we invite some of the worst in the world into our country to commit some of the most heinous crimes, because we just don't care. Our establishment does not care. And it's devastating. It's devastating that my parents came into this country to escape these heinous crimes, only for the country to look like the country they escaped from. It makes no sense.
Indeed. And I mean, we're playing a whack-a-mole strategy when it comes to the migrant hotels, because we've got this developing story today of apparently illegal migrants from the Bell Hotel in Epping potentially being moved to the Britannia Hotel, which is a luxury hotel in Canary Wharf. So a couple of developments on this today. Firstly, this is what's happening when tourists who have paid to book in to this Britannia Hotel. Let me show you what's happening today when they turn up and arrive at the hotel.
To stop the booking.
Okay, so that is people turning up, being turned away. This has now happened a lot. But we've now just found out that Lee Anderson from Reform UK has arrived at the Britannia Hotel and is speaking to the police. Audits, an independent journalist who's been doing some great work on this, has just posted this video. Let's watch.
To be fair, because Lee is he's a politician, he's an MP, yeah, so he, I would have thought Lee Anderson Tower, 30p Lee. No. Maybe, we don't know. I know he definitely supports us. Lee? Hey, why, buddy? How you doing? You right, mate? Yeah?
Fine, mate.
Yeah?
I can't do anything.
No,
mate.
I know. Listen, I understand the situation you're in. Yeah? But obviously you've heard. Yeah?
So that just gets curiouser and curiouser, Stef the Alter Nerd, because Lee Anderson, the Reform UK chief whip, outside the Britannia Hotel speaking to the police where these migrants are believed to be potentially transferred to. What do you think's going on here?
What I think is going on is that the government is just passing the problem around from one community to another, rather than actually dealing with the problem in the first place. Because if they think that moving these illegal immigrants from Epping to Britannia at Canary Wharf is going to somehow magically deal with this situation and avoid any other peaceful protests in the future, then they've got another thing coming. Instead of just passing the buck along and passing the problem along, they need to really start taking action to deal with this problem and resolve it. The whistleblower that you had on earlier on, right, in that clip, he said in that clip, in the meantime, let's just put restrictions on these illegal immigrants. Let's make sure they're not allowed to travel outside a certain radius, that they're not allowed to go near parks, schools, etc. The government could easily put in those kind of enforcement rules, but they're not. Why? Why are they just passing the problem from pillar to post? It's just going to make us even more frustrated.
Yeah, it's really, really worrying what's going on. And of course, it does seem to be Reform UK, which is all over this, which may explain why Lee Anderson is there. Because I just want to share with you, based in Bougie, what Lee Nallingham said. Now, he is the interim branch chairman for Reform UK for Newham and Tower Hamlets. And he has posted, I can now confirm that the Britannia International Hotel in Canary Wharf has been handed over for use by asylum seekers and refugees. Our team in Essex has been leading peaceful protests at the Bell Hotel after serious allegations of sexual assault, and they heard some of those being moved on were heading here. Someone went to investigate and saw a coach of 30 being dropped off. Security is now stationed inside the hotel. That hotel is a 5-minute walk from my daughter's nursery. It's surrounded by other nurseries and primary schools, and yet nobody asked local parents what we thought. Why are they being placed in one of the most expensive areas of London next to schools while locals can't get housing, safety, or basic services? Where's the consultation? Where's the protection for local families? Once again, no answers, just secrecy and silence. But based in Bougie, I guess the argument is that you would say, well, if you're the police, Canary Wharf doesn't have the same sort of local population. And so this may be considered safer if they are trying to put the Bell Hotel out of business.
No, it's not safer because, as the man just said, there's a nursery right there. And Canary Wharf, from my understanding, is almost like the Wall Street of the UK. So that's where businesses are supposed to be, not just migrants who barely know any English and haven't contributed anything to the country, especially migrants who are out here assaulting children and believe that marrying a 6-year-old is perfectly okay. But let me just quickly remind the audience that right now we have old people whose access to heating has been revoked. We also have veterans who have fought for their country sleeping on the streets, begging for money, but yet migrants who just arrived here get quick access to one of the most luxurious hotels in the most expensive areas in the UK. When are people going to wake up to the fact that our establishment no longer cares about you? Okay, it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with being a far right. Even me as a Black woman, I'm frustrated by this. How is it that I was born in this country and yet I don't get access to a free hotel the way these people have? is absolutely ridiculous, but at the same time, it's very symbolic of just how much our establishment do not give a monkeys about us British citizens.
Totally. And I think, Steph, when people see this hotel, they're going to be even angrier because Queen Natalie, the Norfolk Lion's been doing some great work. And she says, migrants moved from Epping to a luxury Canary Wharf hotel with a swimming pool. While hardworking Brits struggle, this is a slap in the face. Fix the broken system now. Enough is enough. And so that's the foyer area, right? You go on, swimming pool, which presumably will still be able to be used by the migrants. That's the bedroom, which obviously is a very posh hotel, and dining facilities that almost looks like it's a pizzeria. So, I mean, I think people are just going to be utterly up in arms, Steph.
Like I said before, Dan, at the end of the day, all the government is doing is passing one problem over to another. And it's not going to make things better. It's going to make things worse. As you've just mentioned, they're essentially getting an upgrade. You know, they're upgrading to this wonderful, awesome hotel in London that costs £400-500 a night. That's like 5-star. It's absolutely insane. Do you know what? Maybe I should go over to Calais, come back on a dinghy so I can get a couple of free nights in Canary Wharf. Maybe I should do that instead. Maybe I'm missing a trick, Dan.
Well, I think a lot of people will be thinking that, won't they, Steph? And look at this, just in from the Mercian, a large police presence now outside the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf. So we're just starting the whole cycle yet again. And there you can see all of those coppers outside. And all I'm going to say is that this whack-a-mole strategy will not work, because I believe there should be peaceful protests up and down the country outside every single migrant hotel, because the time has come for a peaceful uprising. We have had enough of this. Breaking today, a major new celebrity feud between Tommy Robinson and Gary Lineker. Not two people who I ever thought I would put in the same sentence. But Tommy has kicked off at the axed BBC Sports auto cue reader, writing, "Message for Gary Lineker and every other virtue signaller putting our women and children in danger." And he then posted this furious video. Watch.
Hey, Gaza. Now the statistics are coming out about all the migrants in the hotels. Let's have a look at them. 18 British women raped by migrants staying in hotels. So we house them, we feed them, we fund everything with our taxpayers' money. They come into the hotels and then they rape our daughters or our mothers. It's 18 rapes, Gary. You're the wanker holding up signs saying refugees welcome.
Based and Bougie and Stef the Alter Nerd of the Political Nerd podcast on YouTube, here on the Superstar panel today. Based and Bougie, you're an ally of Tommy Robinson, have been for some time. Is he correct to really start targeting part of this liberal lefty elite like Gary Lineker, who I would argue have allowed their virtue signalling to unleash this type of hell that we're now seeing on the British population? Isn't it time to hold the refugee welcome wankers, in Tommy's words, to account?
He has absolute every right to be this frustrated, because let's remember that Tommy Robinson has been spending more than a decade exposing a lot of the things that we are seeing today. He's been exposing the fact that multiculturalism is not working. He's been exposing the grooming gangs. He's been exposing the violence coming from certain communities, and he's actually been persecuted for it time and time again. He's lost almost everything because of this, so he has every right to be angry. Now, people like this Larry guy, I just don't understand why people idolize him, why people look up to him. What has he done? What has he contributed? What has he sacrificed? And this is what I find with people on the left. The reason why they have so much time to fight for the rights for migrants to go out and rape children is because they live a privileged life. Larry, when he goes home to a mansion. In fact, I even saw an article where he invited a migrant into his home to kind of prove that he was this good guy. He was all about refugees. But the real question is how many migrants did he invite? And how long did they stay there for? And why didn't he invite more? Because he knows there's an issue here. You can't just mix in two cultures in one home and expect things to work. So Tommy Robinson has every right to be angry because these people, they are not in tune with reality. They're not.
Stef the Alter Nerd, do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. At the end of the day, Gary Lineker or anyone else turning around and saying, yay, let's welcome the illegal immigrants in. As far as I'm concerned, is turning around and saying, yay, let's welcome an ideology and society that's not compatible with British culture and British laws. And I say that because it's been reported we are now the UK, the Western capital for Sharia courts. We've got over 80 of them in our country. They're not integrating. As far as a lot of us are concerned, they're trying to take over. And that's the problems that we've got when it comes to this mass illegal immigration coming in. Gary Lineker saying, yeah, let's welcome the illegal immigrants, to me is essentially saying, let's welcome all the problems that they're introducing to our society as well. No.
Yeah, and I mean, when Gary Lineker, because I do remember this was a total PR stunt because he had made a front page pledge to take refugees. And then all of a sudden people like me were like, hang on a moment, have you ever done that? So he took this bloke in for a matter of weeks, and then was out of the house. And the reality is that's a totally unrealistic situation, isn't it?
Of course, it's a totally unrealistic situation because, again, the majority of the illegal immigrants that are coming through, they do not have the same ideology and the same culture that we have in Britain. And so you have this conflict that unless the illegal immigrants are at least ready to integrate, that conflict is not going to go away. Gary Lineker tried to prove to everyone, look, you know, I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk, this, that, and the other, but after a couple of weeks kicked him out. I wonder why. What conflict happened, Gary Lineker, as to why you all of a sudden kicked out that poor illegal immigrant that needed your help?
Totally.
What an absolute tosser he is.
Well, totally, because of course, this feud dates back now nearly a decade between Tommy Robinson and Gary Lineker. And the thing is, based in Bougie, I would say, and this is what's so unfortunate, we're never going to have a reckoning from the mainstream media, but we can have a reckoning here on platforms like all of ours, you know, in the independent media space, because I would argue that everything that the feud was initially sparked from has proved Tommy Robinson right. Because remember, it was back in 2016 when all of the unrest at the Calais migrant camps in France first exploded, that Tommy Robinson was very, very clear to Gary Lineker that these refugees, asylum seekers that Gary Lineker was picturing and trying to spark sort of mass hysteria about their treatment were not all adults. And we since know, based in Bougie, in the 10 years that has followed, that many of these illegals that entered the country and did pretend that they were much, much younger than they were actually adults, not children. And I just want to remind everyone that at the time, Lineker condemned Tommy Robinson as a racist idiot for simply pointing out that some of those refugees were not children as they claimed to be. And remember, there have been, I mean, I can think of actual examples where some of these illegals came over pretending to be children and have gone on to murder patriotic Brits. So isn't it about time that we look back to what happened 10 years ago and remember that it was people like Gary Lineker who allowed this invasion of the country and that led to murders of innocents?
See, the unfortunate thing is that when it comes to people like the Gary Linekers and the Piers Morgans of the world, is that we're never going to get an apology. You know, the only time we're going to get an apology is when pigs start flying, is because these people are so up there, I can't say the word, due to their privilege. Do you understand? But I feel like us as a community who have now, our eyes have finally been open to the reality of what's actually going on in this country with mass migration, we have a duty to be like the Tommy Robinson to be like the Tommy Robinson story, to be just as loud as the Patriots who were trying to expose this. And that's why I decided to make my platform, because I realized that, wait, these people are being called far right just because of their skin color. And this is not fair. This is not about far right. This is about the safety of people and children. So I feel as though when it comes to people like Gary and the Piers Morgans of the world, they are never going to apologize. But I feel like us, we have platforms, we have a duty to be just as loud about these situations, because these situations have devastated so many communities, and we can't keep allowing this to happen.
100% we can't, because I mean, Steph, there are real world victims, and I just worry that we don't talk about them enough. I mean, for example, I guess the case for me that always specifically comes to mind is the murder of Thomas Roberts, who was a brilliant young guy, you know, aspiring Royal Marine, whole future ahead of him. And he was out on a night out in Bournemouth, and he was stabbed to death in a total chance encounter by Lawangin Abdul Ramazi, who was one of those illegals who entered the country pretending to be a child. And we should never forget that. We should never forget that.
Well, this is the thing when it comes to Gary Lineker and the people like him in that particular sphere, is that they are, as far as I'm concerned, physically removed from the part of the society in the UK that's affected by these illegal immigrants because of, you know, their status, their wealth, where they're living. Let's put it this way. Opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, would Gary Lineker be as supportive as he is for these illegal immigrants if he lived near an illegal immigrant hotel? Or if his very rich, affluent community was, God forbid, hit by one of those illegal immigrants that went on a knife killing spree or a raping spree, right? Would he be...
Or if he had daughters.
That's exactly. Would he be that supportive, the illegal immigrants, if it was all in his world, in his kind of level of society where he is? No. He has this kind of cookie cutter kind of idea of what these illegal immigrants are. Oh, they're innocents. They're running away from war and poverty, this, that, and the other. What he fails to kind of take into account is between where they're coming from and the UK, they've passed a zillion countries, right, that they could have easily settled in, right? That are not war-torn, that could give them opportunities, this, that, and the other. No, they're coming to the UK because they know they're going to get a free ride. Patrick Christie's on GB News, sorry to bring him up, Dan, in a way, but he did a segment in Calais recently, and the charities that are there are literally putting up how-to guides as to how to safely get across the channel, and when you're in the UK, what to do, and if you're in trouble, where to go, blah, 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 blah. Gary Lineker is far removed from the reality of the situation. It's unreal.
He absolutely is. And based on Bougie, what about the politics of this? Because Tommy Robinson has said for the first time that he might actually back a political party and that he's considering joining. I mean, here's the post. I think I'll join both. Many of those that left Reform because of his lies and attitude towards me have joined Advance UK. So he's talking about Nigel Farage there. And he's talking about two political movements. Firstly, Restore Britain, which is Rupert Lowe's movement, but it's not a party. But he's also talking about Advance UK, which is Ben Habib's political party. Do you think this is a good move for Tommy to join the political fray? Or do you think he's more powerful leading a cultural movement?
Well, I've had conversations with Tommy about this when I visited him in jail. So this is news to me that he's actually considering joining a political party. But my honest opinion is that it's all up to Tommy. If he was to ask me in my personal opinion, I think that Tommy Robinson has done a great job at leading a social movement, and politics for me personally is just not for him, because we've seen this many, many times where politicians have almost used Tommy Robinson, and the minute they got Tommy Robinson's supporters as voters, they almost dumped him. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be the case with Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe, but the way I look at politics, I just don't trust anyone no more, unless it's the UKIP leader, Nick Tanconi, who I think Tommy Robinson should be backing because they've been supporting Tommy Robinson since day one. I just don't have any hope for politicians. But in the end, it really is Tommy Robinson's final decision.
No, it really is. It really is. I just want to return to this story about the Hotel Britannia in Canary Wharf, which has obviously been sparking a huge load of outrage because at the last minute it's been shut down. We're learning that staff have been sacked. We're learning that illegal migrants are being bussed there potentially from the Bell Hotel in Epping as the police sort of try and take the air out of that situation. We knew earlier in the day that Lee Anderson, the Reform UK chief whip, had visited. He has now just posted on X, Canary Wharf, the international hotel is now in lockdown as they prepare for an influx of illegal migrants, 500 rooms here. What are we playing at? And in the past few moments, he has released this video. Watch.
To the local commander, he tells me that the hotel now is being prepared to accept asylum seekers. So the rumours are true. It's a pity that some of the police officers didn't know, some did know, and absolutely furious. This hotel here, by the way, I mean, it must cost a couple £100 a night to stay there. Most normal people in this country would not even be able to afford to come and stay here for a weekend, but we've got illegals coming, and hope the protesters remain peaceful and not going to bother. They seem like a quiet bunch at the moment, but, you know, let's hope it's all peaceful.
So there we go. Confirmation from Lee Anderson, based in Bougie, that migrants are on the way to another major hotel, a luxury hotel, this time in Canary Wharf.
This should actually outrage everybody. This should outrage everybody, and this should prove what the far right have been saying for the longest, which is our establishment is more obsessed and is more concerned with this idea of multiculturalism and making it seem that mass migration is doing well, even if it's at the hands of actual people who assault children, rather than the British taxpayers and the British citizens. It's absolutely disgusting that these people are basically being rewarded for doing absolutely nothing, for contributing absolutely nothing, and for committing some of the most heinous crimes in this country. This makes zero to no sense.
Zero to no sense. I completely agree. But I do think what's good about this, because we've got to take the positives, is that actually this is a story. Every time a hotel in your community is turned into a migrant hotel secretly behind your back without consultation, this is a story. We need MPs like Lee Anderson there. I credit Lee Anderson for doing that today. And we have to talk about it because enough is enough. We have had it. We have absolutely had it. Developing today, former Great British Bake Off winner Nadiya Hussain has sparked fury in recent months with her continual anti-UK posturing after she was given an incredible life and career in this country. Of course, so much of this has resulted from her dumping from the British Bashing Corporation and the fact that she is now taking on a more, shall we say, outspoken approach to why she thinks the UK is some sort of racist hellhole as a Muslim woman. But of course, you can understand why ordinary Brits are absolutely furious about that, given that it was this country and the people of this country that gave this woman, let's be honest, a mediocre baker at best, a huge career. Star power, top-rated TV shows, best-selling books. Where was the racism, Nadiya Hussain, then? But in a brand new podcast interview released today, there is more dumping on the UK going on from what I now view as a very ungrateful woman. Watch.
there are 3.9 million Muslims living in England and Wales. So it's 6.5% of the population, massive amount of the population. And the anxiety rates for young Muslims, depression rates for young Muslims, according to certain data sources, were 50% or higher versus 25% for the population, right? Standard population. So you see significant levels of depression, anxiety, suicide ideation, suicide thoughts. So how does society, one is I'd love to know, why do you think that is, in particular here in the UK? But then also, how does then society shape your faith? So in particular for your children, facing this, they're in that young, that 16 to 30 group, right? How does all of that shape their faith?
What lots of people don't realize is how all-encompassing and how suffocating it is to be a Muslim in the UK.
Now, of course, that is not the fault, according to Nadiya Hussain, of the Muslim community at all. It's the fault of us. It's our fault. It's difficult for her to be a Muslim in the United Kingdom because of us. Now, remember, this is a woman whose parents were born in Bangladesh, who I think has had a privileged life as a result of our mass immigration policies. And what is also interesting to note, that it was Hussain herself who decided to start wearing the hijab at age 14, and she did so not for some great religious reason at the time, but because she admitted that she'd had a bad haircut and she wanted to cover it up. Yet Nadiya Hussain in this podcast makes it very, very clear that it is the fault of the British population for the fact that she believes that she experienced racism and that it's tough being a Muslim in the United Kingdom. Watch.
In terms of my kids, they've probably experienced more racism at a younger age than I did. The first time I ever experienced racism was the day the Twin Towers came down. I was in college. I was 18. I was walking home, and two white men stopped their van, parked up, screeched to a halt, came out, spat in my face, and drove off. And I cried all the way home, and I had no idea what had happened. And I was sobbing. And I came in, and Dad was watching the telly. And I said, Dad said, oh, this is what's happened. And it just like, oh. And it has never stopped since. But my kids have experienced more racism at a younger age because, they've been called terrorists, and, they'll wear their Friday robes for Friday prayer. And it's a battle that we're going to fight for the rest of our lives. And I'm not surprised that the depression and the anxiety is so high amongst Muslims, because I don't think people realize the battle that we fight every single day.
Okay, to my superstar panel, Base and Bougie and Stef the Alter Nerd. Look, Base and Bougie, I don't like the new Nadiya Hussain, I'm going to be honest, because she's someone who now seems to be on a tour of grievance after being someone who, as I say, I think was given huge amounts of fame, huge amounts of support, beloved by the mainstream media, on the covers of mainstream magazines, the cover of newspapers, because we liked her cakes, okay? All of a sudden now, here's the UK, a terrible, terrible racist country. And I think what particularly, in her view, by the way, but I think what particularly gets to me, Based in Bougie, about this, is that they're talking about depression rates amongst Muslims in the United Kingdom. Now, is it not possible, Based in Bougie, that the reason that the rates of depression amongst Muslim people in the United Kingdom are so high is because they are subjected to terrible, terrible religious practices, which include, if you're a woman, having to cover up, having to be treated as a second-class citizen. If you are gay, having to hide who you are. I mean, I would argue there's lots of reasons why Muslims in the United Kingdom, especially young Muslims, might feel depressed, but to blame it on racism coming from the British people, I believe is intellectually dishonest. But how do you feel?
I have three questions. First and foremost, who did this study? I mean, I find that a lot of people are always talking about the data this and the data that. What person actually went around to every single Muslim person in the UK and checked the temperature of each Muslim person's depression. That is not realistic, okay? And like you said, if they are depressed, it's because they are following a very, if they are depressed, it's because they are following a very oppressive ideology. That's why they're depressed. Second of all, Nadia, if the UK is such a racist country, why are you here? Why are you here? Why haven't you packed your bags and left yet?
Yes.
If I found the UK
You can go to
be
Bangladesh tomorrow.
Exactly. You can leave. If I found the UK to be a very racist country as a black woman, I'm out of here. I'm not wasting no time. But these people keep crying about racism and being a victim to racism and this and that, but yet you're still here. Clearly it's because the country is not a racist country. And she also mentioned the fact that she was spat on because of the 9/11 incident. You know, that's a hate crime. And when a hate crime happens, you can report it to the police. And she didn't. Why didn't she report it to the police? I challenge Nadia right now to report that to the police if it was such a serious hate crime. Maybe the reason why she didn't do it is because maybe it didn't happen, or maybe she's over exaggerating the story. If a hate crime has happened to you, report it to the police. But these people continuously complain about these hate crimes that are happening, but never report on it. So I don't like this victim tour that a lot of these people are doing, where they keep whining about racism whilst continuing to live in this country. Pack your bags and leave.
Yeah, I mean, I find that story, the 9/11 story, very hard to believe. Very, very, very hard to believe. I would probably file it under the in the case of things that never happened, but obviously, who knows? Steph, your view on Nadiya Hussein's new tour of grievance?
Oh, it just reminds me of our favourite Dutch ass of Monty Shit's show. I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim. Victim, 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 victim. That's all I'm hearing right now from Nadiya Hussain in her insane tirade against the BBC. All right, her show got cancelled. It wasn't doing well in the ratings. That's the reason. That's it. There's no other inferior kind of situation behind it. She says, oh, you know, we're depressed because of this, that, and the other, and we're depressed because of the British people, blah, blah, blah. No, 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 no. Like you said earlier on, Dan, maybe, you know, Muslims are depressed because of the restrictions and rules they have to live within due to their religion. And I would say it's tough being a Muslim and female, full stop, because what they're subjected to at times in the name of their religion, as far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely insane. I just did a quick Google search, and there's this Muslim Women's Network UK, and they've consistently reported domestic abuse as the #1 reason for calls to their helpline. Not, oh my goodness, there's this evil British lass, and oh, she's doing this, that, and the other. No, 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 no. It's domestic abuse. In 2019, 32% of calls to this Muslim Women's Network UK was related to domestic abuse. But no, Nadiya Hussain ain't going to be saying that. But just to add on a little bit here, our favourite Dutch ass must be watching this. And I wouldn't be surprised if she actually follows this same playbook as Nadiya, because new reports are coming through with Netflix sources saying that her deal is now dead in the water because of the lack of viewers. That the With Love Meghan failure is the final nail in the coffin. So I won't be surprised after she gets dropped by Netflix that she follows the same playbook as Nadiya here.
Yes, exactly. It will be racism, won't it? Netflix axed me because of racism. I think it's also worth pointing out, right? And by the way, I mean, I'm not one to judge, but Nadiya Hussain married a bloke who she'd met once, okay, because it was an arranged marriage. Now, again, that must surely be pretty difficult if you've grown up in the United Kingdom and you're living amongst a sort of Western, very civilized society where young women have freedom of choice to marry who they want to. I wouldn't be surprised if that did contribute to a degree of depression. And even though Nadiya Hussain did go through this marriage to Abdul Hussain, a guy who she'd only met once, and she did go on to have 3 children. In this podcast interview, which I did find very depressing and dark, actually, she admitted that previously she had never wanted to do either of those things. Watch.
Child after child after child in the hope to bear a boy. That's not the life I wanted. I was like, no thanks. I don't want to be a wife. I don't want to be a mother. I just want to study. I just want a career. I just want to make loads of money. That's it. I don't want to do any of that. I was like, was the most unappealing thing. There was not one maternal bone in my body. I was like, don't want to marry, don't want to have kids, not going to do it. I just wanted to go to university. That was it. And my mum said, if you go to university and you leave this house, I will change the locks and you will never set foot in this house again. And when you're 18 with no financial backing, no money, no savings, that's a really scary thing to hear. When I didn't go to university, I rebelled in the best way I know, which is to go quiet. I went completely quiet. Nobody knew what was going on in my head. Not one person could say they knew what was happening in my head. I went quiet. I isolated. Definitely, like, I was in the throes of depression at that time, hugely.
Okay, so look, let's be honest. We know what's going on here, Based in Bougie. You only had to watch a little bit more of this podcast to actually work out what the real depression was about. It's not about the United Kingdom. It's not about racism towards Muslims. It's about the fact that you are really struggling to live this lifestyle where you, even in a very modern Western society like the United Kingdom, because you are following the Muslim religion, are unable to do a lot of things that you feel you should be able to do. And that is clearly the root cause of the depression. So I feel like she's almost answered her own question within this podcast.
It's actually so hilarious how much she just exposed herself. Not only exposed herself, but she exposed the lies of this fake statistic. Like I said in the beginning, who is going around and measuring the temperature of depression of all these Muslims is not realistic. The reason why you was depressed is because you are following an oppressive religion and ideology. Okay, if you actually go in deep into this religion, a lot of the things are very backwards, okay, whether it's arranged marriage, whether it's marrying a 6-year-old, whether it's women having to cover up head to toe, whether it's women being forced to be housewives. I'm not saying there's anything wrong to be housewives, but here in the UK, you actually have the option to be a housewife or not to, but with her, she didn't have an option. That was what was making you depressed, not a typical guy called Katie and Johnny who live down the street and have the Union Jack hanging down their window and just go to the pub 5 days a week. That's not the root cause of your depression. But these people are just absolutely delusional and they will do anything to point fingers at everybody else except the decisions that they've made themselves.
Now, speaking of the BBC, Based in Bougie, I'm very interested in your view on this one as a black woman, because the BBC have decided that they are going to create, and it's actually James Essex, the brilliant James Essex, who has uncovered this. They've created a black woman's guide to workplace microaggressions. And James says, unsurprisingly, it paints all white people out to be nothing but bumbling caricatures of idiocy. Is this really societal cohesion? I laughed out loud during the video, but I'll get your verdict, Based in Bougie. Let's have a watch.
Happy birthday to... Take it away, Amanda!
No, I'm fine.
Oh, come on, it's Sarah's birthday. Let's hear you sing. Sing. Come on, Beyonce.
Happy birthday to you. That was so beautiful. Anyway, who wants some cake?
Yes.
It's not easy being the minority in any situation, but in the workplace, as the only black woman, it can be a very frustrating and stressful environment.
Okay, Beyonce. Now let's get in formation for this cake.
I'm just in the middle of something. I'll be there in a sec.
Oh.
And that, my friends, is an example of a microaggression.
That's real. I promise you that's real. Based in Bougie, do you feel seen or do you feel patronised by that?
Dan Wilson, I'm packing my bags and I'm leaving this country. The racism was too much. Like, my blood is boiling. But first and foremost, that is not even racism. That is not microaggression. Okay, that is just someone who sees someone who maybe looks different to them and is just trying to find ways to make them happy or trying to find ways to make them comfortable. Because I have been in those situations where I do see people from different communities and they will be like throwing in like black slang, But I don't see it as them being racist. I just see them as them trying to make me comfortable and happy. But the fact that they over exaggerate it to be microaggression and racism is just absolutely silly. Racism is when someone calls you a monkey, or someone says that you deserve to die, or someone calls you the N-word. But this is what's happened with this term racism, is that it's been watered down so much that the real racist situations that are happening in the workforce are no longer being recognized, because apparently calling someone Yonsei and saying occur is racist is absolutely ridiculous.
Also,
it's just not racist.
Also, Steph, like, white people don't do that. Honestly, do they? Unless white people at the BBC are very, very different to the white people that I've encountered. But we don't act like that, do we, Steph?
No, not at all. I was watching that and I was like, this has got to be some kind of resurgence of Little Britain, like a Little Britain reboot or something like that. It feels like a Little Britain gag, or a gag that's being created in a Ricky Gervais program. That clip's more satire than what actually happens in reality. If people are offended in that kind of scenario, seriously, check your snowflake kind of levels, because they're way too high at that point.
Well, we know
we don't speak
we
like
can't
Beyonce
make
or like
jokes anymore. We can't make jokes anymore. This is why, because of that type of patronizing bullshit from the BBC. And also, then you've got, it's like a circular firing squad, because it's like the BBC are doing that, but then at the same time, they're being accused of all sorts by Nadiya Hussain, someone who they made a star. It's just like, do you know what? I never used to speak about race at all. I never used to speak about black or white or Asian or anything. It didn't even come into my day-to-day life. And now it's thrust constantly into the conversation so unnecessarily. But look, what a brilliant superstar panel today. Based and Bougie, who you should, of course, find and follow on TikTok, on Instagram, and here on YouTube. And Stef the Alter Nerd, YouTube sensation, host of the podcast Political Nerds. Love having you both. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for your super chats today. Some really good ones. Anthony Lafleur, who's one of our #1 supporters, thank you so much, Anthony, said, even though I'm happy that Ellen DeGeneres and her disgusting wife Portia are no longer here in the US, I don't blame you, Dan, and any of you Brits in the UK for wanting to mock her and make her feel not comfortable. And this is because Ellen DeGeneres is, of course, now confirmed that she's here to stay in the UK because Donald Trump became president. And Anthony, I think you're right. I think we need to talk about this. And at some point this week, we absolutely will. Avatar, thank you for the super chat. He said, I am absolutely disgusted that Farage called the Epping protesters far-right thugs. He still hasn't learned. We gave him our votes. Without us, he is nothing. He would do well to remember that. Oh, amen. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And from Alex Marmon, another super chat, who says, the England women's football team have now said they will no longer take the knee as it's not stopping racism. Why did they not realise that sooner? Oh my God, I know, Alex. And to be honest, I've been totally infuriated by the huge overreaction to this story this week. Look, every single person in public life, I saw Nigel Farage talk about this at the Reform UK press conference yesterday, every single person in public life gets constantly trolled for whatever their characteristics happen to be. So for me, it's because I'm gay. Do you see me running to the police? Do you see me making a huge deal about it? Just ignore the trolls. Honestly, you've got to see that there's a difference between trolling and actually trying to cause someone serious physical harm. And I think we've got to see what that difference is. And thank you too to Jean Wallace for her super chat and sticker, and also to Love Sunshine, who became a member of Outspoken Plus over the course of the show. Okay, time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Your nominees for Union Jackass, Anna and Decor, nominated by Anna Island 17 for calling concerned mums and children far-right activists. Nick Lowles, the boss of Hope Not Hate, nominated by Scott Shadow 342 for running a corrupt to the core organisation and putting out a briefing on the far right at the Bell Hotel. And Nicola Sturgeon, nominated by Just Margaret 1, because she started all this trans infiltration of women's spaces, that nonsense with her worship of Stonewall. And of course, to me, Nicola Sturgeon will forever be Scheming Sturgeon. The results are in. She gets just 14% of the vote today. The runner-up is Nick Lowles with 33% of the vote. But today's Union Jackass, who will now compete to be named the worst Briton in the world this week, Narinder Kaur, with 53% of your vote. And today's Greatest Briton, nominated by Mother Clanger, is Katie Hopkins, because despite her show being cancelled in rugby, Mother Clanger says she turned up anyway to take selfies with the crowd who'd paid to see her. And if you do want to see us discuss that in much more detail, just head to the YouTube channel and look at our special video posted last night, where we go into depth about what happened with Katie Hopkins and how she ended up storming the venue anyway without causing any trouble. It was brilliant. Now, coming up in today's Uncancelled After Show on Substack, as Meghan Markle is finally axed by Netflix, as Stef the Alter Nerd discussed a little bit earlier, our Royal Mastermind Angela Levin will expose how the MSM is trying to destabilise the British monarchy by welcoming back Prince Harry and spreading shock news smears against King Charles and Prince William. There's also a gorgeous new video that's been released to mark Prince George turning 12, which we will discuss as well. So you can head on over to www.outspoken.live and join the discussion there. But we will be back with you here tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.